Hi, this is Jake again, and in this video we're going to be talking about why we get angry and what we can do about it. Okay? Why do we get angry? Well, one of the main reasons why we become angry is due to our expectations. We usually either have expectations of how someone should behave, how a certain situation should be, and when those expectations aren't met, we have the opportunity or the possibility of becoming angry. So a lot of times people think that someone makes them angry due to their behavior, right? But in reality, it's not actually them making you angry, it's the expectations that you have for their particular behavior that isn't being met, okay? And so, for example, if you had a date with somebody, let's say at 7 o'clock at a restaurant or whatever, 7 p.m. and you have a right to expect them to show up at 7 and they showed up at 7:15, 7:30, don't call, don't text. It's a good possibility that you're going to become angry because of that, because that's not what you expected, right? But if that person were to have called you and texted you just before 7 and said, hey, I'm going to be running late, there's traffic, and they showed up 7:15, 7:30, you wouldn't be as upset because you expected them to arrive late because they communicated with you and told you what was happening. Yeah, so that's just one example. But being angry in and of itself is not always a bad thing, because there's certain things we have a right to expect. You know, we have a right to expect respectful treatment from others, and when somebody is not treating us in the way we expect as far as how we're being respected, we become angry. That anger is justified, and what that anger will motivate us to do is to take action to protect ourselves. So we don't want to say that all anger is bad, you know, as long as we're not staying angry to the point where we continue on to get into rage. Some anger is positive because it causes us to change the course of our actions. So how can we stop becoming angry every time something doesn't go our way? Every time somebody does something different than what we expected? There are many different strategies and techniques for controlling anger. However, one method we're going to talk about here today is to manage our expectations by preparing our mind for different outcomes. You know, a lot of times we get upset is because we're really focused on one thing that we want to happen without even giving any consideration to possibly it happening a different way. So when we're so focused on one way and it doesn't happen our way, and when it doesn't happen, we get crushed, disappointed, and possibly angry. We can prepare our mind for more than one possibility. You know, we can look over all the positive possibilities and then the negative possibilities in advance, so we're prepared. So when it happens, there won't be so much intensity behind our emotions because we're prepared for it. For example, if we use the example that we talked about earlier for someone showing up at a date late, before we even arrive for the date, we can already have in our minds that it's a possibility that the person will show up on time, but then there's also a possibility they may show up late. And we have to be okay with both possibilities. Now, obviously, if you're prepared for it and it happens, somebody shows up a few minutes late, you can be a little bit more patient and deal with it in grace. But that doesn't mean, obviously, you don't want to wait for that person forever. I mean, you have to have certain boundaries of how long you're willing to give the other person to show up without texting or calling before you decide on your course of action. That's called a boundary, and that gets into something that we can talk about later, boundary setting. But that's something you would have to choose, and you can also choose that in advance. I mean, you know your boundaries. Everybody's boundaries are different. I mean, You may be the type of person where you'll give the person 30 minutes. Some may give them an hour. Some may just give them 15 minutes. So it really varies. That's something that you would have to decide on your own. In summary, instead of just only having your mind fixated on one option, the option that you want to see, always consider beforehand that it's a possibility that it could be another option that takes place, and be prepared for both. Well, I hope this technique helps you in your everyday life to live a more stress-free life, less anger, less drama in your life. And if you're interested in learning more strategies and more techniques on how you can overcome anger issues and master anger management, I'm gonna put a link in the description below where you can click and learn how you can learn more about the subject. Anyway, thanks for watching and see you soon.